The fog sits on Mill Ridge like a guilty conscience, thick and clinging, turning streetlights into fuzzy halos of yellow doubt. October air carries the smell of cold earth and burned leaves, the kind of autumn scent that makes you think about endings rather than beginnings. I park my Crown Vic outside a modest house with peeling white paint and a single lit window that glows like a beacon for the lost. The porch sags under the weight of too many winters, and the doorbell hangs by a thread of corroded wire. I knock instead, 3 solid raps that echo in the stillness. Through the thin door I hear footsteps, quick, nervous, the kind that belong to someone who's been waiting by the window. Sarah Matthews opens the door before my knuckles have finished their work. She's thin in the way that suggests missed meals rather than vanity. Her auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail that's seen better days. Dark circles under her eyes speak of night shifts and worry, and her hospital scrubs hang loose on a frame that's forgotten how to rest. But it's her eyes that catch me, green like sea glass, flickering between hope and something that looks dangerously close to desperation. "Detective Marshall?" Her voice carries the careful politeness of someone who's rehearsed this moment. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "Not a detective anymore," I say, stepping into the narrow hallway. "Just Ray. And I'm here because your message said it was about a child." The house smells like instant coffee and industrial-strength disinfectant, the kind they use in hospitals to mask the scent of human suffering. Family photos line the hallway, a progression of birthdays and Christmases, but I notice the recent ones show only Sarah and a dark-haired boy with serious eyes. No father in the frame anymore. She leads me to a living room that's seen better decades. The furniture is clean but worn, the kind of middle-class respectability that's holding on by its fingernails. A child's drawing is taped to the refrigerator visible through the kitchen doorway. Stick figures surrounded by swirls of color that seem too deliberate to be random. "Coffee?" she asks, already moving toward the kitchen. "Black." I settle into a chair that creaks under my weight and study the room. No television, but there's a stack of library books on child psychology and something called Synesthesia When Senses Collide. Interesting reading for a single mother. She returns with 2 mismatched mugs, her hands trembling just enough to make the coffee slosh. When she sits across from me, she perches on the edge of the couch like she's ready to bolt. "My son, Toby," she begins, then stops, choosing her words with the care of someone who's had this conversation go wrong before. "He was expelled from St. Augustine 3 days ago." I wait. In my experience, the first version of any story is rarely the whole truth. He accused his music teacher of having a dark red aura. She watches my face for a reaction. "Mr. Grayson, Robert Grayson. Toby said the red meant danger, that someone was going to get hurt." "Kids say a lot of things," I observe, sipping coffee that tastes like it was brewed sometime around noon. "Usually about teachers they don't like." 3 days later, they found Lily Chen dead in the woods behind the school. That stops me mid-sip. Lily Chen. I'd heard about it on the radio. 14-year-old girl, promising student, found by hikers with her neck broken. The kind of tragedy that makes small towns lock their doors and eye their neighbors with suspicion. "The police think it was an accident," Sarah continues. "That she fell." "But Toby—" She wraps her hands around her mug like it's an anchor. "Toby sees things, colors around people. He says they tell him about emotions, about what someone's really feeling inside." I set down my coffee and lean back. "Mrs. Matthews, there are doctors who specialize in children who—" "I'm a nurse," she cuts me off, and there's steel beneath the exhaustion. "I know about delusions and trauma responses." "This isn't that." "Then what do you think it is?" She's quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee like it might hold answers. "I think my son survived a car accident that should have killed him and something changed. I think he can see things the rest of us can't. And I think someone at that school knows it." The fog presses against the windows, turning the glass into mirrors that reflect our shapes back at us. Two people sitting in a room full of questions neither of us wants to ask. I've spent 30 years in law enforcement, and I've learned to trust facts over feelings, evidence over intuition. But there's something in Sarah Matthews's voice that makes me pause. Why call a private investigator? I ask. Why not a priest or a psychiatrist? She laughs, but there's no humor in it. Just the hollow sound of someone who's run out of hope and is borrowing against tomorrow's supply. Because I don't want an exorcism, Mr. Marshall. I don't want my son medicated into silence. I want the truth. The truth about what, exactly? About who killed Lily Chen. About why my son is so terrified he won't leave the house. About why I feel like someone's been watching us since the day Toby was expelled. She leans forward, and I see the desperation break through her careful composure. I want to know if my 12-year-old son really can see the darkness in people's souls, or if I'm going crazy from grief and night shifts and too much coffee. I study her face, the worry lines etched deep, the way her eyes dart to the window every few seconds, the protective tension in her shoulders. She's scared, that much is obvious. But scared of what? That her son is gifted or that he's ill? That someone's watching them or that no one believes her? Where's Toby now? I ask. Upstairs. Drawing. She glances toward the ceiling. He draws the colors he sees, keeps a diary of everyone's auras. Has for 4 years now since the accident. I'd like to meet him. Tomorrow, she says quickly. He doesn't do well with strangers at night. The colors are stronger then, he says. More frightening. I stand, already knowing I'm going to take this case despite every rational instinct screaming at me to walk away. Maybe it's the October fog playing tricks with my judgment, or maybe it's the way Sarah Matthews looks like she's drowning and I'm the last life preserver in sight. My rate is $200 a day plus expenses, I say. And Mrs. Matthews, if your son really can see what you think he can see, we need to be very careful about who else finds out. She nods, relief washing over her features like sunrise after a long night. Thank you. Thank you for believing me. But as I step back into the fog-wrapped evening, I'm not sure believing is the right word. I'm willing to listen, willing to investigate, willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Whether that's toward answers or deeper into the darkness that seems to cling to Mill Ridge like the mist, I can't say. What I can say is that somewhere in this town, a 14-year-old girl is dead, and a 12-year-old boy claims he saw it coming in the color of his teacher's soul. If that's not worth $200 a day, I don't know what is. I return to the Matthews house the next morning when the fog has lifted enough to reveal Mill Ridge in all its faded glory. The October sun filters through bare branches, casting skeletal shadows across the front yard where someone has raked leaves into neat piles that won't stay neat for long. Sarah answers the door with the hollow-eyed look of someone who hasn't slept. She's traded her scrubs for jeans and a sweater that's seen too many wash cycles, but her hands still carry the antiseptic smell of the hospital. He's in the kitchen, she says without preamble, leading me through the narrow hallway. I told him you were coming. He's been drawing since 6 this morning. The kitchen is small and bright, with yellow walls that probably seemed cheerful once upon a time. Now they just look tired. At a round wooden table sits Toby Matthews, and seeing him steals something from my chest. A sharp intake of breath that I pretend is just the cold air following me inside. He's small for 12, pale in the way that suggests too much time indoors. His dark hair falls across his forehead, and when he finally looks up from his sketchbook, his eyes are the color of storm clouds, gray and deep, and far too old for his face. Colored pencils are scattered across the table like discarded rainbow fragments, and his fingers are stained with graphite and crayon wax. You're surrounded by gray mist, he says without any kind of greeting, his voice soft but clear. He doesn't look directly at me, instead focusing on a point somewhere past my left shoulder. That's the color of old guilt. Something you carry but can't put down. I feel Sarah tense beside me, but I force myself to remain calm. Kids pick up on body language, on subtle cues adults think they're hiding. There's always an explanation. "Hello, Toby," I say, settling into the chair across from him. "I'm Ray Marshall. Your mother asked me to talk with you." He nods once, then returns to his drawing. Careful strokes of blue and purple that might be a face or might be abstract art. "Hard to tell with 12-year-olds. Can you tell me about the colors you see?" I ask. "They're around everyone," he says, still not meeting my eyes. "Like halos, but not wholly. More like weather. The lady at the grocery store yesterday had yellow all around her, bright and warm. That's happiness. Real happiness, not the fake kind." Sarah pours coffee and sets a mug in front of me. Her hands are steadier today, but I notice she doesn't sit down. She hovers near the counter like she's ready to intervene if this goes sideways. "What about other people?" I press gently. "People you see regularly?" Toby's pencil pauses. "Mrs. Henderson next door has orange around her. That's worry. She's always worried about something. Her cat, her garden, whether her son will call." He glances up briefly, then away again. "The mailman has orange too, but darker. He's afraid of something specific. A bill he can't pay, maybe, or a doctor's appointment he doesn't want to keep." I sip my coffee and consider. Neighborhood gossip, overheard conversations, simple observation skills, all of it could explain a perceptive kid's insights. But there's something in Toby's matter-of-fact delivery that makes the hair on my neck stand up. "Tell me about your teacher," I say. "Mr. Grayson." The pencil stills completely. Toby's shoulders hunch forward like he's trying to make himself smaller. "Dark red," he whispers, "like blood in a shadow. It was all around him that day, thick and angry and wrong. Not the red of anger or passion. The red of something broken inside." "When was this?" 3 days before they found Lily." His voice gets even quieter. "I tried to tell Principal Stone, but she just said I was being disruptive. She doesn't have a color at all. Just empty space where something should be." Sarah shifts by the counter, and I hear the soft clink of her wedding ring against her coffee mug. "Tell him about your diary, Toby." The boy reaches for a small notebook beside his sketchbook. The cover is worn smooth and the pages are thick with pencil marks and crayon smudges. He opens it carefully like it contains state secrets. "I write down everyone's colors," he explains. "Started right after the accident. Mom says it helps me process things, but really it's because I don't want to forget. Sometimes the colors change, and that's important." He flips through pages covered in childish handwriting and small sketches. Names, dates, color descriptions, all catalogued with the methodical precision of someone twice his age. "Here," he says, stopping on a page dated 2 weeks ago. "Mr. Grayson used to be yellow-green." That's creative energy mixed with contentment. But then it started changing. First darker green, like jealousy or sickness. Then the red came. I lean forward to study the page. The handwriting is careful, deliberate. Each entry includes a name, date, color description, and Toby's interpretation of what it means. For a 12-year-old's diary, it reads more like a psychological profile. "What about happy colors?" I ask. "What do those look like?" For the first time, something approaching a smile touches Toby's face. "Pure yellow is the best. Like sunlight. Mrs. Chen has it sometimes when she talks about Lily's paintings." "Had it," he corrects himself, and the smile disappears. "I guess she won't have it anymore." The past tense hits like a slap. I watch Toby's face, looking for signs of guilt or knowledge he shouldn't have, but all I see is sadness, the deep, uncomprehending sadness of a child trying to make sense of loss. "Toby," I say carefully, "do you ever see your own color?" He flinches like I've hit him, then slides the diary away from me. "I don't look in mirrors anymore. Mom had to cover the one in my bedroom." "Why?" Because I don't want to know what color I am now." His voice drops to barely a whisper. "What if it's black? What if the accident made me like Principal Stone? Empty where something important should be." Sarah moves then, crossing to put her hand on her son's shoulder. He leans into the touch like a plant seeking sunlight. "Your color is beautiful," she tells him. "It always has been." But Toby shakes his head. "You're my mom. You have to say that. And besides, you can't see them. Nobody can see them but me." I study the boy, the way he hunches his shoulders, the careful distance he maintains even from his mother, the old exhaustion in eyes that should be bright with childhood mischief. Whatever Toby Matthews can or can't see, whatever gift or curse he carries, it's isolating him in ways that make my chest ache. "One more question," I say. "When you told Principal Stone about Mr. Grayson's color, what exactly did she say?" Toby's grip tightens on his pencil. "She said I was a disturbed child making up stories for attention. She said if I didn't stop disrupting class with my fantasies, I'd have to find another school." He looks up at me then, and for just a moment our eyes meet. "But Mr. Marshall?" She was lying. The whole time she was talking, there was this flicker, like something trying to hide behind the emptiness. "What kind of flicker?" "Black," he says. "Pure black. The color of secrets so dark they eat everything else." And that's when I know, with the certainty of 30 years in law enforcement, that whatever game we're playing here, Toby Matthews isn't making up the rules. I spend the next 3 days putting Toby Matthews through what I tell myself is a scientific test. What it really is, I suspect, is an exercise in my own stubborn refusal to accept what I'm seeing. The first test comes Tuesday afternoon. I arrange for a cable repair appointment at the Matthews house, a legitimate service call for their flickering television, but also an opportunity to see if Toby's gift extends beyond people he knows. The technician is a heavy-set man in his 50s with calloused hands and the kind of mustache that went out of style during the Carter administration. Toby sits at his usual spot at the kitchen table, colored pencils scattered like evidence of some crime against normalcy. When the cable guy walks through the front door, Toby doesn't even look up from his drawing. "Orange and yellow mixed together," he says quietly, just loud enough for me to hear. Recent good news, but he's scared to believe it's real. I follow the technician into the living room, making small talk while he examines the cable box. After 20 minutes of professional consultation about signal strength and old wiring, he mentions, completely unprompted, that his wife just found out her cancer is in remission. 26 years of marriage, he says, coiling cable with practiced efficiency. "You learn not to count your chickens, you know? Good news has a way of turning bad when you're not looking." The orange of fear, the yellow of joy, mixed together like Toby said. I tell myself it's a coincidence. The second test comes Thursday morning. Sarah's at work, pulling a double shift at the hospital, and I've arranged for a pest control inspection. Another legitimate need, given the old house's tendency to attract uninvited guests of the six-legged variety. The exterminator is a thin woman in her 30s with tired eyes, and the kind of efficiency that comes from running your own business in a town where people haggle over every dollar. Toby watches her through the kitchen window as she unloads equipment from her van. "Purple," he says, still focused on his sketchbook. "Deep purple, like bruises that are almost healed. She's ashamed of something, but it's not her fault." The woman, her name tag reads Diana, spends an hour checking foundation vents and crawl spaces. When she finishes, she accepts Sarah's offered coffee and sits at the kitchen table across from Toby. I position myself where I can hear the conversation. "You're lucky to have such a quiet boy," Diana says, watching Toby work with his colored pencils. "My son's the same age, but well, let's just say he keeps me busy." She doesn't elaborate, but something in her voice makes me pay attention. After she leaves, I do what 30 years of police work taught me to do. I make a phone call to a friend who still has access to the databases I used to call home. Diana Morrison, age 34, divorced, 1 child. Son arrested twice in the past 6 months for shoplifting and vandalism. Mother refusing to press charges against her own kid, taking the financial hit herself, trying to handle it privately rather than let the boy get a juvenile record. Purple like bruises. Shame that isn't her fault. I tell myself it's good detective work, that I picked up on subtle cues and followed logical leads. But sitting in my car outside the Matthews house, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the front yard, I feel something cold settling in my stomach. The third test breaks me. Friday evening, I'm sitting across from Toby at the kitchen table, supposedly going over his diary entries, but really just trying to make sense of what I've witnessed. Sarah's upstairs, giving us space to talk, and the house has that end-of-week quiet that makes you think about things you'd rather forget. Toby's been sketching for the past hour. Long, careful strokes of blue and gray that might be a storm cloud or might be something else entirely. His concentration is absolute, the kind of focus I remember from crime scenes where every detail mattered. "Can I ask you something?" I say, closing the diary. He looks up, those storm cloud eyes meeting mine for just a moment before sliding away. "Sure. How long have you been able to see the colors?" "Since the accident." He sets down his pencil with careful precision. "When I woke up in the hospital, everything was different. Like someone had turned on a light I didn't know was missing." "What do you remember about the accident?" "Dad was driving. It was raining." Toby's voice goes flat, distant. "A girl ran a red light. Teenage girl texting on her phone. Dad tried to swerve, but the road was slick." I wait, watching his face for signs of trauma, of the kind of emotional scarring that might manifest as elaborate fantasy. "I remember flying," he continues. "Not like a bird, more like being thrown." And then darkness. When I woke up, Mom was crying, and she had this aura I'd never seen before, silver mixed with black. Grief so deep it had weight. "And your father?" "Died on impact." Matter of fact, like reciting homework. "The girl who hit us walked away without a scratch. Mom says that's how these things happen sometimes." "The universe doesn't care about fair." I lean back in my chair, studying this 12-year-old who talks about death and grief like an old philosopher. "Toby, have you ever been wrong about someone's color?" "Sometimes people try to hide what they're feeling," he says, like Principal Stone. "But the colors don't lie." "They can't." "What about me?" I ask, though something inside me is screaming not to. "What do you see when you look at me?" Toby's pencil stops moving. He looks up, really looks at me this time, and I see something shift behind his eyes, a kind of recognition that makes my skin crawl. "Gray mist," he says slowly. "Like fog, but heavier. It's been with you for a long time." He pauses, head tilted like he's listening to something I can't hear. "There's something else, though." "Something darker underneath." "What kind of something?" "The color of missing pieces." Toby's voice drops to barely a whisper. "Mr. Marshall, why don't you ever talk about your daughter?" The world stops. Just stops, like someone hit pause on a movie I didn't know I was watching. My mouth goes dry, and there's a ringing in my ears that might be blood pressure, or might be the sound of my carefully constructed walls coming down. "I never told you I had a daughter," I managed to say. "You didn't have to." Toby's eyes are wide now, scared by his own words. "The gray mist has a shape, a small shape, and it's holding your hand." I stand up so fast the chair scrapes against the linoleum, a harsh sound that cuts through the kitchen, quiet like a knife. Sarah's footsteps upstairs pause, then continue. She's giving us privacy she shouldn't give, space for a conversation that's gone places neither of us intended. "How?" The word comes out rougher than I planned. "How could you possibly?" "I don't know," Toby says, and now he's the one who looks like he wants to run. Sometimes the colors show me things, like memories that aren't mine, pictures of what makes people sad. My hands are shaking. 30 years of police work, and I'm undone by a 12-year-old with colored pencils and eyes that see too much. Her name was Emma, I hear myself say. She was 7. Leukemia. Toby nods, like this confirms something he already knew. The gray mist is shaped like a little girl. She's not scary, Mr. Marshall. She's just there, like she's waiting for you to stop carrying her and start remembering her instead. And that's when I know, with the certainty that comes from having your deepest secret pulled out of the darkness by a child who shouldn't know it exists, that whatever Toby Matthews can see, it's real. Which means everything else he's told me is real too, including the darkness he saw around Robert Grayson 3 days before Lily Chen died. The weekend brings a change in Sarah Matthews that I don't like. When I arrive Saturday morning, she meets me at the door with eyes that dart constantly to the street behind me, and her hands shake when she pours coffee. The careful composure she's maintained since I took the case has cracked, revealing something raw and frightened underneath. "Someone's watching the house," she says without preamble, leading me to the kitchen where Toby sits with his usual array of colored pencils. I know how that sounds, but I'm not imagining it. "What makes you think that?" I ask, settling into my chair across from the boy. He looks up briefly, nods a greeting, then returns to what appears to be a detailed map of some kind. "Thursday night I got home from my shift around midnight. There was a car parked across the street with the engine running. When I pulled into the driveway, it drove away." Sarah wraps her arms around herself despite the warm kitchen. "Last night, the same thing. Different car, but the same feeling. Like someone's keeping track of our schedule." I make a note to do some evening surveillance of my own. In my experience, paranoia and intuition often wear the same clothes, and with everything I've learned about Toby's abilities, I'm not inclined to dismiss his mother's concerns. "There's something else," Sarah continues. "The school called yesterday. Robert Grayson has been suspended pending a full investigation. They're treating Toby's accusations seriously now that—" She glances at her son, then back to me. "Now that there's been a death." Toby looks up from his drawing. "Mr. Grayson isn't the one who hurt Lily," he says quietly. "I need to tell you about his color." I lean forward. "Go ahead." "The dark red I saw, it wasn't about wanting to hurt someone. It was about being hurt." Toby sets down his pencil and meets my eyes for a moment. Someone told him something that made him feel betrayed and angry and sad all at once. Like when you find out someone you trust has been lying to you. Sarah frowns. "But you said it was dangerous." "It was dangerous to him," Toby clarifies. "The kind of hurt that makes people do things they wouldn't normally do." "But not hurt children. Hurt himself, maybe. Or the person who betrayed him." I think about this, running it through the filter of 30 years' experience with human nature. A man betrayed, angry, carrying that rage like a loaded weapon. It fits with domestic problems, marital issues, the kind of personal crisis that can make someone's emotional state visible to a boy who sees feelings as colors. "Who do you think did betray him?" I ask. Toby shrugs. "His wife, maybe?" The red had that personal feeling, like family hurt, which means Robert Grayson, whatever his personal problems, probably isn't our killer. I make another note, feeling pieces of a puzzle shift without quite clicking into place. "Show me what you're working on," I say, nodding toward Toby's drawing. He turns the paper toward me, and I see it's not a random sketch, but a carefully detailed map of St. Augustine's School. The main building, the music room, the cafeteria, even the woods behind the playground, all rendered with the precise attention to detail of someone who's spent considerable time studying the layout. "I drew everyone's usual spots," Toby explains, pointing to small marks scattered across the map. "Where the teachers stand during recess, where the principal makes her rounds, where the maintenance staff work." Each mark is labeled with a name and a color notation. Yellow for the kindergarten teacher, cheerful but tired. Orange for the janitor, worried about job security. Green for the librarian, peaceful, loves her work. But there's one mark that makes my blood run cold. This one, I say, pointing to a notation near the main office. Principal Stone, you wrote no color here. Toby nods grimly. I've been watching her more carefully since the meeting about Mr. Grayson. Most people, even when they're trying to hide their feelings, still have some color. Faint maybe, or mixed up, but something. Principal Stone doesn't. What does that mean? I'm not sure. Toby traces the edge of his map with one finger. It could mean she's really good at controlling her emotions. Or it could mean something's wrong with her. Like the part that feels things is broken. Sarah has gone very still. Broken how? Some people who do bad things learn to turn off their feelings so they don't feel guilty. Toby says with the matter-of-fact tone I'm learning to dread, or sometimes trauma breaks that part of you. But with Principal Stone, it's different. It's not like something's turned off. It's like something's been carved out. I study the map, thinking about Margaret Stone. I've met her twice. Once when I was still on the force, handling a minor vandalism case at the school, and once more recently when I was checking Toby's story. Both times I got the impression of a competent, no-nonsense administrator. Professional, distant, but nothing that raised red flags. Of course, I also thought I could trust my ability to read people. Before I met a 12-year-old who sees emotions as colors and knows things he shouldn't know. There's something else, Toby continues, his voice dropping lower. Yesterday, when I was walking home from the library with Mom, I saw Principal Stone at the grocery store. She was buying things that didn't make sense. What kind of things? Rope, plastic sheeting, bleach. He looks up at me with those storm cloud eyes. And she paid in cash. Lots of cash, like she didn't want anyone to remember her credit card. The kitchen goes silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. Sarah's face has gone pale, and I feel that familiar tightness in my chest that comes when a case takes a turn toward the truly dangerous. Before I can respond, Sarah's phone rings. She answers with shaking hands, her voice carefully neutral. Hello? Yes, this is Sarah Matthews. A pause, then her face crumples. Oh, God. When? How long has she been missing? She hangs up and turns to us with tears in her eyes. That was Mrs. Ross. Emma's missing. She didn't come home from school yesterday, and they just found her backpack in the woods behind St. Augustine. Emma Ross. 13 years old, athletic build, short brown hair. I remember her from Toby's descriptions. One of the kids with consistently bright colors. The kind of child who seems untouched by the darkness that seeps into adult lives. The police are organizing search parties, Sarah continues. They want to question anyone who's had contact with students recently. That includes suspended teachers. And private investigators, I think, already calculating how this development changes everything. 2 girls, 2 incidents, both connected to St. Augustine School. The kind of pattern that makes veteran cops lose sleep and worried mothers check locks twice before bed. Toby has gone very still, his hands flat on the table, staring at his map of the school like it might reveal secrets hidden in the careful pencil lines. Toby, I say gently, what are you thinking? He looks up at me, then at his mother, then back to the map. When he speaks, his voice is barely a whisper. Principal Stone knows about me. About what I can see. He swallows hard. And yesterday, when I saw her at the store, she looked right at me. Really looked, like she was measuring me for something. What do you mean? The man with no color, Toby says, and now he's shaking. That's what the empty space around her feels like, and he knows I can see him. Sarah moves to her son's side, putting protective hands on his shoulders, but I can see the fear in her eyes. The fear that her gift-cursed child has attracted the attention of something that shouldn't be attracted. We need to be very careful, I say, though the words feel inadequate. All of us. But as I watch Toby fold his map with trembling fingers, I suspect that careful might not be enough. Whatever game we've stumbled into, the rules are changing faster than we can learn them. And somewhere in Mill Ridge, a 13-year-old girl named Emma Ross is missing, while the person responsible walks among us wearing the face of respectability and the heart of something darker than Toby's colors can name. Monday morning finds me driving through Mill Ridge's narrow streets with a 12-year-old in my passenger seat and his mother in the back. All of us pretending this is a normal outing instead of what it really is, a field test for abilities that shouldn't exist. The October air carries the smell of wood smoke and dying leaves, and the diner's neon sign flickers against the gray sky like a beacon for the desperate and the hungry. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asks for the third time, her voice tight with worry. She's been checking the rearview mirror since we left the house, her hands twisted in her lap like she's trying to hold something together through sheer force of will. "We need to know," I say, though part of me wonders if ignorance might be the safer option. If Toby's really seeing what we think he's seeing, we need concrete evidence. The Mill Ridge Diner squats on Main Street like it's been there since the town was founded, all chrome and cracked vinyl and the kind of coffee that could wake the dead. The breakfast crowd is thin this time of morning. A few retirees nursing cups and newspapers, a construction worker grabbing coffee to go, the usual collection of small-town faces that blend together until something makes them stand out. Toby follows me inside without complaint, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, eyes already moving across the room in that careful way I've learned to recognize. He takes in the elderly man at the corner booth, the woman behind the register, the waitress wiping down tables with practiced efficiency. We settle into a booth near the window, red vinyl that squeaks when you move, and a table scarred by decades of coffee cups and small-town conversations. The waitress approaches with the weary smile of someone who's been on her feet since before dawn. "Morning, folks. Coffee?" She's maybe 45, auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail, the kind of working woman tiredness that comes from pulling double shifts and worrying about bills. Nothing remarkable about her except the way Toby's eyes track her movement, studying something the rest of us can't see. "Coffee for the adults," I say. "Orange juice for the boy?" She nods and moves away, and I lean across the table toward Toby. "What do you see?" "Yellow," he says quietly, not looking at me. "Bright yellow, like sunshine. Pure joy, but she's trying not to show it. Like she's afraid if she acts too happy, something bad will happen to balance it out." Sarah shifts beside me. "Joy about what?" Toby shrugs. "Something recent. Something that changed everything for her." When the waitress returns with our drinks, I catch her arm gently. "Excuse me, miss. You seem like you're having a good morning." She laughs, a sound that bubbles up despite her attempt to stay professional. "Is it that obvious? I was trying to play it cool, but—" She glances around the diner, then leans in conspiratorially. "I won the lottery yesterday. Not the big one, but enough to pay off my credit cards and maybe take a real vacation for the first time in 15 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I hear myself congratulating her, watch her walk away with a spring in her step that wasn't there 5 minutes ago, but all I can focus on is the ringing in my ears that sounds like my world view cracking down the middle. "Yellow joy," Toby says quietly. "She kept checking her purse while she was talking to you." "That's where she keeps the ticket." Before I can process this fully, the bell above the door chimes and the mailman enters. He's a thin man in his 60s with the kind of mustache that belongs in a Norman Rockwell painting, but his movements are jerky, nervous. He orders coffee to go, pays with hands that shake just enough to notice. Toby watches him with that same careful attention. "Orange," he murmurs. "Fear orange, but fresh. Something that happened this morning." The mailman is standing close enough to our booth that I catch fragments of his conversation with the waitress. "I'm damned kid came out of nowhere. Lucky I stopped in time. Shook me up worse than it should have. My hands are numb around my coffee cup, but there's heat building in my chest. The uncomfortable warmth of realizing you're in deeper water than you thought. I stand up, legs unsteady, and approach the counter where the mailman is waiting for his order. "Rough morning?" I ask. He turns to me with the grateful look of someone who needs to talk. "Kid on a bike, couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Came flying around the corner on Maple Street without looking. I hit the brakes so hard I thought I'd lock them up." He shakes his head. 23 years carrying mail in this town, never had a close call like that. Kid's probably home having breakfast, doesn't even know how close. He trails off, accepting his coffee with hands that are still trembling. After he leaves, I return to the booth where Sarah and Toby are watching me with expressions I can't quite read. "Fear orange?" Toby says. He keeps seeing the moment in his head, over and over. That's what the color looks like when something scary replays itself. I slide into the booth and stare at my coffee like it might contain answers. 2 for 2. 2 perfect reads of emotional states Toby couldn't possibly have known about through normal means. The rational part of my mind scrambles for explanations, lucky guesses, cold reading, some kind of elaborate setup. But that heat in my chest is spreading, becoming something that feels dangerously close to acceptance. "Are you okay?" Sarah asks, and I realize I've been sitting in silence for longer than normal. "Define okay," I say, though I try to make it sound like a joke. "Your son just demonstrated abilities that shouldn't exist, and I'm having to recalibrate everything I thought I knew about the world." Sarah's laugh has no humor in it. "Welcome to my life for the past 4 years. She's checking the street again, that nervous glance toward the window that's become as automatic as breathing. "There's a blue sedan across the street," she says quietly. "Same one that was parked near our house this morning." I look, and she's right. Blue sedan, tinted windows, engine running. Could be innocent. Someone waiting for a friend, making a phone call, any number of reasonable explanations. But in the context of everything else we're dealing with, innocence feels like a luxury we can't afford. "How long has it been there?" I ask. "Since before we came in." Sarah's voice is getting that tight quality again. "I'm not paranoid, Ray. Someone is watching us." Toby hasn't said anything, but I notice he's positioned himself so he can see the street without being obvious about it. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely a whisper. "The car has the same feeling as Principal Stone's office. Empty where something should be." And that's when I know, with the sick certainty of someone who's just realized they're standing on quicksand, that this isn't about testing Toby's abilities anymore. This is about survival in a game where the rules keep changing and the stakes keep rising. I leave money on the table and stand up. "We're going home. Different route than we came." As we walk to my car, I catch the waitress watching us through the window, her lottery winner smile fading into something that looks like concern. Behind her, the elderly man at the corner booth folds his newspaper and reaches for his phone. Small towns, I remind myself. Everyone knows everyone's business. But as I start the engine and pull away from the diner, checking my mirrors for blue sedans and dark secrets, I can't shake the feeling that some kinds of business are deadlier than others. And we've just wandered into the kind that leaves 12-year-old girls missing and grown men questioning their grip on reality. The call comes at 6 a.m. Tuesday morning, dragging me from dreams that taste like black coffee and feel like drowning. Detective Morrison's voice on the other end carries the kind of exhaustion that comes from searching woods all night and finding nothing but shadows. "Emma Ross," he says without preamble. "Been missing since Sunday. Parents thought she was sleeping over at a friend's house. Friend thought she was homesick. Nobody realized until yesterday afternoon that she'd vanished into thin air." I sit on the edge of my bed, watching gray dawn creep through the blinds, and feel that familiar weight settling in my chest. 13 years old, athletic build, short brown hair, the kind of kid who should be worried about math tests and school dances, not becoming another name in a file that's getting thicker by the day. "Any leads?" I ask, though I already know the answer from Morrison's tone. "We arrested Robert Grayson an hour ago." Morrison's words come fast, the rhythm of a man trying to convince himself as much as me. "Found blood in his car. Type matches Emma Ross. Plus, he's been acting strange since the suspension. Missed 2 appointments with his lawyer. Wife says he's been drinking." I'm quiet for a moment, thinking about Toby's careful distinction between the red of violence and the red of betrayal. "You sure you've got the right man?" "Right now, he's what we've got." Morrison's voice carries the weight of a town demanding answers and a department with precious few to give. Chief's under pressure from the mayor, mayor's under pressure from parents who want someone behind bars. Grayson fits the profile. After I hang up, I dress quickly and drive to the Matthews house through streets that feel like they're holding their breath. The October morning has that brittle quality that suggests winter's not far away, and the fog has lifted just enough to reveal a town wrapped in its own secrets. Sarah answers the door before I can knock, her face pale and drawn. "I heard on the radio," she says. "They arrested the music teacher." I find Toby at the kitchen table, but instead of his usual sketchbook, he has 3 notebooks spread open in front of him. A carefully organized system of documentation that makes my detective instincts hum with recognition. This isn't the casual diary of a child. This is the methodical record-keeping of someone who understands that details matter. "Show me," I say, settling into the chair across from him. The first notebook contains what I've seen before, daily entries with names, dates, and color descriptions. But the second notebook is different, detailed maps of everywhere Toby goes regularly. The school, the library, the grocery store, even the park where Sarah sometimes takes him on weekends. Each location is marked with color-coded dots representing the emotional patterns of people who work or spend time there. The third notebook stops me cold. "Patterns," Toby explains, his voice quiet and matter-of-fact. "I started noticing that some people's colors change in predictable ways. Like Mr. Henderson next door. His blue sadness always gets darker on Sunday evenings because he dreads going to work Monday morning." The pages are filled with careful observations, trend lines drawn in colored pencil, notes about seasonal changes in people's emotional states. It's the work of someone who's been watching human nature with scientific precision. "Here," Toby says, flipping to a page marked with a red tab. "Mr. Grayson's colors over the past month." The chart shows a clear progression from yellow-green contentment to darker green anxiety to the deep red anger that Toby witnessed the day he made his accusation. But there's something else. A notation in the margin that makes my blood run cold. "2 days before I saw the red," Toby explains, "Mrs. Grayson came to school to talk to him. She had the colors of someone delivering bad news, gray guilt mixed with orange fear. After she left, his colors started changing." I study the chart, seeing the story it tells. A man receiving news that shattered his world, carrying that rage and betrayal like a poison that colored everything around him. Not the colors of a predator, but of a victim. "The blood in his car," I say slowly. "Could it be his own?" Toby nods grimly. "The red I saw wasn't about hurting others. It was about being hurt so badly you might hurt yourself. Which means we're looking at the wrong man, and whoever killed Lily Chen and took Emma Ross is still out there, still free, still hunting." An hour later, I'm walking through the halls of St. Augustine's School, breathing air that tastes like chalk dust and institutional disinfectant. The principal's office is on the 2nd floor, past bulletin boards covered with student artwork and achievement certificates that speak of a place where children are supposed to be safe. Margaret Stone's secretary, a nervous woman with worried eyes, buzzes me through to the inner office. Principal Stone rises from behind a desk that could double as an aircraft carrier, extending a hand that feels like cool marble. "Mr. Marshall," she says, her voice carrying the kind of professional warmth that never quite reaches her eyes. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me." She's tall and severe, her gray hair pulled back in a style that hasn't changed since the Reagan administration. Everything about her office speaks of control. Perfectly aligned papers, not a pen out of place. Even the air feels regulated to an uncomfortable precision. But it's not the orderliness that makes my skin crawl. It's something else entirely. "I wanted to discuss young Toby Matthews," she continues, settling back into her chair with movements that seem choreographed. "His accusations against Mr. Grayson have caused considerable disruption to our school community." I sit across from her, studying her face for tells, for the micro-expressions that 30 years of police work taught me to read. But there's nothing there. Not nervousness, not guilt, not even the natural curiosity most people show when talking to an investigator. It's like looking at a perfectly constructed mask. "Toby's a sensitive child," I say carefully. "Sometimes children pick up on things adults miss." "Indeed." Stone's smile is perfectly crafted, showing just the right amount of teeth. But we must be careful not to mistake childhood fantasy for genuine insight. Toby has been through significant trauma. The death of his father, the stress of his unusual perceptions. Sometimes traumatized children create elaborate stories to process their pain. The temperature in the office seems to drop 10 degrees. Not metaphorically, literally. I can see my breath starting to mist, and Stone either doesn't notice or doesn't care. "What kind of stories?" I ask. "Oh, the usual things. Claims about seeing colors around people, predictions about future events, elaborate theories about the emotional states of adults." Stone's voice maintains that carefully modulated tone, but there's something underneath it, a current of ice-cold calculation. The concerning part is how detailed these fantasies have become, almost as if someone were encouraging them. The implied accusation hangs in the air between us like a challenge. She's suggesting that I'm manipulating a traumatized child for my own purposes, and the worst part is how reasonable she makes it sound. Has Toby caused problems before his accusation against Mr. Grayson? I ask. Not problems, exactly. But there have been incidents, times when his behavior suggested he might need professional intervention. Stone opens a file on her desk with precise movements. Dr. Harris, our consulting psychiatrist, has expressed concerns about Toby's grip on reality. Dr. Leonard Harris. I make a mental note to have a conversation with the good doctor. You seem very concerned about one 12-year-old boy, I observe. I'm concerned about all my students, Stone replies, but something flickers behind her eyes, just for a moment, just long enough for me to catch it, especially those who might be vulnerable to outside influences. As I leave the school 20 minutes later, walking through hallways that echo with the distant sounds of children at play, I can't shake the feeling that I've just been warned. Not threatened exactly, but warned in the way that apex predators warn potential competitors away from their territory. The October air feels warm compared to Principal Stone's office, and I find myself checking my rearview mirror more carefully than usual as I drive away from St. Augustine's School. Because Toby was right about one thing. Margaret Stone doesn't have a color at all. She has something much worse, the perfect absence of anything recognizably human. Sarah's call comes at 11:30 that night, her voice cracking through the phone line like glass under pressure. I'm half asleep on my couch, surrounded by case files and the remnants of a dinner that came from a box, when her words jolt me upright with the efficiency of a fire alarm. Someone tried to break in, she says, and I can hear the tears beneath the words. The back door, they forced it. Nothing's missing, but Ray, they were in my house. They were in my house while we were sleeping. I'm already reaching for my keys, the familiar weight of my .38 settling against my ribs as I slip into the shoulder holster I haven't worn in 3 years. Are you safe? Where's Toby? We're locked in the bathroom upstairs. I have my phone and a baseball bat, and I don't know what else to do." Her voice breaks completely then, dissolving into the kind of sobs that come from a mother realizing her child isn't safe anywhere anymore. "I'm 10 minutes away," I tell her, already backing out of my driveway. "Stay where you are until you hear my voice." The streets of Mill Ridge are empty at this hour, nothing but streetlights creating pools of yellow isolation in the October darkness. I drive faster than I should, taking corners with the kind of precision that comes from 30 years of emergency responses, my headlights cutting through fog that seems thicker than it was this afternoon. The Matthews house sits in darkness except for a single upstairs window, the bathroom where Sarah and Toby have barricaded themselves against whatever came calling in the night. I park in the driveway and approach the front door with my weapon drawn, though I'm not sure what I'm expecting to find. The front of the house looks normal, undisturbed. But when I circle to the back, I see what sent Sarah into a panic. The back door hangs open like a broken promise, the frame splintered where someone applied more force than finesse. Not the work of a professional, but someone determined enough to make noise if necessary. I clear the house room by room, checking closets and corners with the methodical precision of someone who's done this before. The living room is untouched, the kitchen exactly as I remember it from this morning. Upstairs, the bedrooms show no signs of intrusion. Whoever broke in didn't come to steal or vandalize. They came to send a message. "Sarah," I call from the bottom of the stairs. "It's Ray. The house is clear." I hear the bathroom door unlock, then careful footsteps on the stairs. Sarah appears first, still clutching the baseball bat with white knuckles, her face pale and streaked with tears. Behind her comes Toby, but he's not the composed 12-year-old I've grown accustomed to. This child is shaking, eyes wide and unfocused, looking like he's seen something that broke a fundamental part of his understanding of the world. "Nothing's missing," Sarah says, leading me to the kitchen where she collapses into a chair with the boneless exhaustion of someone whose adrenaline has finally run out. I checked everywhere. The television, my jewelry, even the petty cash I keep in the cookie jar. They didn't take anything. I examine the back door more carefully. The damage is concentrated around the lock, but there are also scratches on the frame that look deliberate. Someone testing the wood, looking for weak points, planning their approach. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment break-in. This was reconnaissance. "What time did you hear them?" I asked. "Around 11. I was getting ready for bed when I heard the wood splintering." Sarah wraps her arms around herself. "By the time I got downstairs to look, they were gone. But Ray, they'd been in the house. I could feel it. That sense you get when someone's been in your space without permission." Toby hasn't said a word since I arrived. He sits at the kitchen table with his hands flat against the surface, staring at something only he can see. When I approach him, he flinches like I've struck him. "Toby," I say gently, "can you tell me what happened?" For a long moment he doesn't respond. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he says, "The man with no color knows about me." "What do you mean?" "I felt him." Toby's words come out in a rush, like he's been holding them back and can't anymore. Not saw, felt, like a cold spot in the air, moving through the house. He was looking for something. Sarah moves to her son's side, placing protective hands on his shoulders. "Looking for what?" "My notebooks." Toby's voice gets even smaller. "He went to my room first. I could feel him standing there, looking at my desk where I keep the color diary. But he didn't take them." "Why not?" I ask. "Because taking them would let us know what he wanted. This way, we just know he was here. Know that he can get to us whenever he chooses." Toby finally looks up at me, and I see terror in those storm cloud eyes, the kind of fear that comes from being hunted by something you can't fully understand. I spend the next hour checking windows and doors, installing additional locks that I pick up from an all-night hardware store, doing everything I can think of to make the house more secure. But we all know it's mostly theater. Someone who wanted to get in badly enough would find a way, and whoever visited tonight wanted us to know that. "I'm staying," I announce when Sarah suggests I go home. "Couch, floor, doesn't matter. Nobody's sleeping alone in this house tonight." Sarah doesn't argue. She makes coffee that none of us drink and sandwiches that none of us eat. The kind of busy work that keeps your hands occupied when your mind can't settle. Toby returns to his notebooks, but his usual careful concentration is replaced by nervous glances toward the windows. Around 2 a.m., I position myself in the living room where I can see both the front and back approaches to the house. The fog has lifted enough to reveal shapes in the darkness: parked cars, mailboxes, the ordinary furniture of suburban life that looks sinister in the small hours of the morning. That's when I see it. A car parked 3 houses down, positioned where it has a clear view of the Matthews house. No lights, but I can make out the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat. Watching, waiting. I consider approaching the car, confronting whoever's inside, but something makes me hesitate. If this is connected to Principal Stone, to whatever darkness is stalking children in Mill Ridge, then revealing my awareness might put Sarah and Toby in greater danger. Instead, I watch the watcher, noting the make and model of the car, the way the driver's head turns to track any movement in the Matthews house. Around 4 a.m., the car starts up and drives away, slow and deliberate, like someone who has all the time in the world. When morning comes, I find tire tracks in the mud beside the back door, wide tires, probably an SUV or truck. Fresh tracks that weren't there yesterday, pressed deep into the soft earth like signatures left by someone who wanted to be remembered. Standing in the pale October sunlight, looking at evidence of violation and threat, I realize we've crossed a line. This isn't about investigating a gift-cursed child anymore. This is about protecting him from something that's decided he's too dangerous to be left alone. And as I study those tire tracks, I can't shake Toby's words from the night before. The man with no color knows about me, which means whatever's coming next, we won't see it coming until it's already too late. Wednesday morning brings news that hits like a slap across the face of reason. Detective Morrison calls while I'm drinking coffee in the Matthews kitchen, watching Toby methodically catalog yesterday's emotional observations in his color diary with the precision of a scientist documenting a new species. "We found letters," Morrison says without preamble, his voice carrying the weight of a man who's been up all night chasing leads that keep slipping through his fingers. "Hidden in Dr. Carl Weber's office at the school. Love letters, if you can call them that, addressed to both victims." I set down my cup carefully, feeling the pieces of the puzzle shift again without clicking into place. What kind of letters? The kind that make your skin crawl? Detailed descriptions of their special qualities, promises about private sessions where they could discuss their feelings away from other students. Morrison's voice gets harder. "We're bringing him in this afternoon. Weber's been the school psychologist for 15 years, had access to both girls, knew their schedules, their vulnerabilities." After I hang up, I find Sarah and Toby watching me with the kind of careful attention that's become second nature in this house, where secrets multiply like cancer cells. "They think they found their man," I say, then explain about the letters, about Dr. Weber's access and opportunity. But even as I speak the words, something feels wrong. Too convenient, too perfectly timed in the wake of Grayson's arrest falling apart. "I want to meet him," I say to Sarah, "before the police take him in. If Weber's really the one we're after, Toby should be able to see it in his colors." An hour later, we're walking through the halls of St. Augustine's School again, past the same bulletin boards and achievement certificates, breathing the same air that tastes like chalk and institutional secrets. But today the atmosphere feels different, charged with the kind of nervous energy that comes when a community realizes the danger might be hiding in plain sight. Dr. Weber's office is on the first floor, tucked away in a corner that suggests either humility or the kind of administrative afterthought that befalls school counselors in underfunded districts. The door is open, and through it I can see a man in his 50s with graying hair and kind eyes, packing books into cardboard boxes with the careful movements of someone who knows his time is up. "Dr. Weber?" I knock on the doorframe. "I'm Ray Marshall, private investigator. This is Sarah Matthews and her son Toby." Weber looks up from his packing, and I see genuine surprise flicker across his features. Not the calculating look of someone who's been expecting this visit, but the open confusion of a man who hasn't quite grasped how dramatically his world has changed. "Mr. Marshall," he says, rising to shake my hand. "I've heard about your investigation. Terrible business, these missing girls." His grip is firm, but not aggressive, and his eyes move to Toby with the kind of professional interest I'd expect from a school psychologist. "Hello, Toby. How are you holding up?" Toby doesn't answer immediately. He's studying Weber with that careful attention I've learned to recognize, his head tilted slightly like he's listening to music only he can hear. When he finally speaks, his voice is quiet but certain. "Green," he says. "Steady green like forests in summer. Professional care mixed with personal worry. He's afraid, but not guilty afraid. More like confused afraid." Weber's eyebrows raise. "I'm sorry?" "My son has a unique perspective on people's emotional states," Sarah explains carefully. "He's very perceptive about hidden feelings." I watch Weber's reaction, looking for the kind of nervous deflection I'd expect from someone with secrets to hide. Instead, I see genuine curiosity mixed with the professional interest of someone who's spent years studying childhood psychology. "That's fascinating," Weber says, settling back into his chair with the easy manner of someone who has nothing to hide. "I've read about emotional synesthesia, the ability to perceive abstract concepts like feelings in concrete terms. Very rare, but not unheard of in children who've experienced significant trauma." The fact that he's not trying to dismiss or discredit Toby's abilities strikes me as significant. "In my experience, guilty people work harder to undermine their accusers." "Tell me about the letters," I say, deciding on directness. Weber's face crumples like I've hit him. "I still can't believe this is happening. 15 years building trust with these kids, helping them through their worst moments, and now—" He shakes his head. "Someone planted those letters in my filing cabinet. Had to be. I would never write anything like that to a student." "When did you last access those files?" "Monday morning, when I was looking for Emma Ross's intake forms. The police wanted her psychological evaluation from when she started at St. Augustine." Weber's hands are shaking now, not with guilt, but with the kind of fear that comes from watching your life disintegrate for reasons you can't understand. "The letters weren't there then." "I would have noticed." Toby has been quiet during this exchange, but now he moves closer to Weber's desk, studying something I can't see. When he speaks, his voice carries a certainty that makes my skin prickle. "Someone else has been in this office," he says. "Recently." The air still has traces of their color, black mixed with gray. The same emptiness I felt at Principal Stone's office, but with calculation added. Someone who plans things carefully. Weber looks confused. "Black and gray?" "The colors of someone who's very good at pretending to be normal," Toby explains, his voice getting smaller. "Someone who can walk into a room and make people trust them while they're destroying everything." I study Weber's face, comparing it to my memories of Principal Stone's careful mask, of the perfectly controlled responses that never quite reached her eyes. Weber's confusion appears genuine, his fear authentic in a way that can't be easily faked. "Dr. Weber," I say carefully, "have you noticed anything unusual about Principal Stone lately? Any changes in her behavior or routine?" "Margaret?" Weber considers this. "She's been more hands-on recently, visiting offices she normally doesn't, asking detailed questions about student files. I assumed it was related to the increased scrutiny after Lily Chen's death." But Toby is shaking his head. "She wasn't looking for information. She was planting things. I can smell the residue of her emptiness on that filing cabinet. The pieces click together with the sound of a loaded gun being cocked. Someone with administrative access, someone who could move through the school without questions, someone who could manipulate evidence and direct suspicion wherever they chose. Principal Stone hasn't just been watching Toby. She's been orchestrating an entire investigation, steering it away from herself and toward convenient scapegoats. "We need to go," I say, standing abruptly. "Dr. Weber, whatever you do, don't sign anything or admit to anything until you have a lawyer present. This isn't over." As we leave the school, Toby, walking between Sarah and me like a child who's seen too much of the adult world's capacity for cruelty, I feel the weight of realization settling in my chest like lead. We're not just dealing with a killer. We're dealing with someone smart enough to manipulate an entire investigation, patient enough to let innocent people take the blame, and connected enough to plant evidence without raising suspicion. Someone who's been hiding in plain sight while children disappear and families destroy themselves with worry and guilt. Someone who knows exactly what Toby can see and has decided he's too dangerous to be allowed to keep seeing it. Sarah is waiting for us when we return from the school, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal with eyes that flicker between desperation and something darker I can't quite name. She's changed clothes since this morning, traded her practical jeans for a dress I haven't seen before, something that suggests she's planning to go somewhere that requires looking respectable. "You have to take him," she says before I can speak, her words tumbling out in a rush that sounds rehearsed. "Tonight, right now. Pack whatever he needs and get him out of Mill Ridge before they come for him." "Before who comes for him?" I ask, though I already know the answer will be more layers of the same fear that's been choking this house since I first walked through the front door. "Principal Stone? The police. Whoever's been watching us." Sarah moves to Toby's side, her hands hovering over his shoulders without quite touching him. I can feel them closing in. The walls are getting smaller every day, and soon there won't be anywhere left to run. Toby looks up from his color diary, those storm cloud eyes moving between his mother and me with an expression I've never seen before. Not just fear, but confusion so deep it looks like pain. "Mom," he says quietly, "your colors are changing again." Sarah's hands freeze in mid-gesture. "What do you mean?" "They've been shifting for days. Sometimes you're orange fear like normal, but then there's this flicker, like static on a television. Colors that don't belong together, mixed up in ways that don't make sense." I watch Sarah's face carefully, looking for the micro-expressions that might tell me what Toby's seeing in emotional terms. But instead of the relief or concern I'd expect from a mother worried about her son's perceptions, I see something that looks dangerously close to panic. "You're stressed," she says, her voice taking on that careful modulation I remember from our first meeting. "We all are. Sometimes stress makes the colors harder to read." But Toby is shaking his head. "It's not stress colors. It's like you're two different people wearing the same face. Sometimes you're my mom, but sometimes you're someone else entirely." The kitchen goes quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on streets that suddenly feel very far away. I study Sarah, really study her, looking past the exhausted single-mother facade to whatever's underneath. The way she's positioned herself between Toby and the door, the dress that suggests she's planning to be somewhere official, the hands that shake not with fear, but with something that might be anticipation. "Sarah," I say carefully, "what aren't you telling me?" "I'm telling you to pack my son's things and get him somewhere safe," she snaps, and for just a moment, the mask slips. I see something in her eyes that's cold and calculating, the look of someone who's been playing a role so long they've almost forgotten it's not real. There are people in this town who want to hurt him, and I won't let that happen. I start to respond, but Toby's voice cuts through the tension like a knife through silk. "The red around you isn't fear red anymore," he whispers. staring at his mother with the kind of horrified recognition that comes from seeing your world reorganize itself into something unrecognizable. It's guilt red, deep old guilt, the kind that eats at you until there's nothing left but the need to make it stop. Sarah's face goes white. "Toby, stop." "You killed my father," he says, the words falling into the kitchen silence like stones into still water. "The accident wasn't an accident. You did something to make it happen, and you've been carrying that guilt ever since." I'm on my feet before I realize I'm moving, my hand automatically reaching for the weapon that suddenly feels inadequate for whatever we're dealing with. Because if Toby's right, if Sarah Matthews has been lying about everything from the beginning, then I've been protecting the wrong person. "Toby, that's enough," Sarah says, but her voice has lost its careful control. "You don't know what you're talking about. The accident was—" "You found out about the affair," Toby continues with the relentless precision of someone following a thread to its logical conclusion. "Dad was cheating on you and you couldn't stand it, so you did something to his car, something that would make it crash when he tried to avoid that girl running the red light." Sarah's sob comes out like a broken sound, raw and desperate. "You don't understand. He was going to leave us." "Leave you. I couldn't let that happen." And there it is, the confession I didn't see coming, delivered in a kitchen that smells like coffee and industrial disinfectant, while a 12-year-old boy stares at his mother with the kind of devastation that rewrites the fundamental rules of trust. "But the girl lived," I say, understanding flooding through me like ice water. "The teenage girl who hit you. She walked away without a scratch." "She wasn't supposed to," Sarah whispers. "It was supposed to look like she caused the accident. She was supposed to die, too." The sound of car doors slamming outside cuts through the moment like a gunshot. I move to the window and see 3 police cars in the driveway, officers already approaching the front door with the kind of purposeful movement that means they've come to make an arrest. "Sarah Matthews," Detective Morrison's voice carries through the thin walls. "This is the Mill Ridge Police. We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the murders of Lily Chen and Emma Ross." Sarah laughs, a sound so broken it makes my teeth ache. "They think I killed those girls, but I didn't. I would never hurt a child." "Then who did?" I demand, but before she can answer, the front door explodes inward, and police officers flood the house with weapons drawn and voices shouting commands that blend together into chaos. In the confusion, officers yelling, Sarah screaming protests of innocence, handcuffs clicking into place, I lose track of Toby. When I finally locate him, he's standing at the kitchen window, perfectly still, staring at something in the street with an expression that makes my blood freeze. "Toby!" I call over the noise, but he doesn't respond. He's focused on a car parked across the street. The same blue sedan we saw at the diner, the same one that's been watching the house. The engine is running, and through the windshield, I can make out the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat. "The man with no color," Toby says, his voice barely audible above the chaos of Sarah's arrest. "He's been waiting for this, waiting for them to take Mom away so I'd be alone." I move to the window, trying to get a better look at the car, but as soon as I appear in the frame, the sedan pulls away from the curb with deliberate slowness, the departure of someone who's accomplished exactly what they came to do. As the police lead Sarah away in handcuffs, her protests of innocence echoing down the street, I realize we've been playing someone else's game from the very beginning. Sarah Matthews may be a killer, but she's not the killer we're after. She's just another pawn, moved into position at exactly the right moment to take the fall for crimes she didn't commit. And now Toby, the boy who can see the darkness in people's souls, is exactly where someone wants him to be. Alone, vulnerable, and completely dependent on the adults around him for protection. Adults who may not be who they seem to be, As the police cars disappear into the October afternoon, leaving me standing in a house that reeks of betrayal and broken trust, I watch Toby carefully fold his color diary and slip it into his backpack with the methodical precision of someone preparing for a journey he never wanted to take. Because whatever happens next, we both know the game has changed. And the person holding all the cards has just made their opening move. The Mill Ridge police station after midnight has the atmosphere of a funeral home where someone forgot to turn off the lights. Fluorescent tubes buzz overhead with the persistence of dying insects, casting everything in a sickly yellow wash that makes healthy skin look jaundiced and guilty skin look like week-old newspaper. The air tastes of stale coffee and the particular brand of desperation that seeps into institutional walls over decades of broken promises and half-truths. I sit in the observation room, watching Sarah Matthews through one-way glass that reflects my own face back at me in ghostly overlay. She's hunched over a metal table that's seen better decades, her hands folded with the precision of someone who's learned that controlling small details helps when everything else spins out of reach. Detective Morrison sits across from her, his notebook open, pen poised like a scalpel ready for surgery. Toby occupies the plastic chair beside me, small and silent as a shadow that's lost its owner. He hasn't looked toward the glass since we arrived, hasn't acknowledged his mother's presence in the next room. His hands rest flat on his knees, and every few minutes he shifts position with the careful movements of someone trying not to draw attention to himself. "Mrs. Matthews," Morrison's voice carries through the intercom with digital clarity. "Can you account for your whereabouts on the evening of October 15th? Sarah's response comes without hesitation. "Working a double shift at the hospital. Pediatric ward. I can provide you with the time cards." Her voice has that flat, rehearsed quality of someone who's been expecting this question, prepared for it, maybe even practiced the answer in front of a mirror. Too prepared, whispers the part of my brain that spent 30 years learning to spot lies wrapped in reasonable explanations. Real innocence stumbles, searches for details, second guesses itself. Guilt rehearses. And October 22nd? Another double shift. ICU that time. "Mrs. Henderson next door can verify I left the house at 6 p.m. and returned at 8 the following morning." Sarah's hands remain perfectly still. No nervous fidgeting, no defensive gestures. It's the kind of control that comes from either complete innocence or extensive practice. I watch her profile, noting the way she holds her shoulders, the careful modulation of her voice, the fact that she hasn't once asked about Toby's welfare or requested to see him. An innocent mother, even one exhausted by questioning, would be thinking about her child. Sarah Matthews is thinking about her alibi. Toby makes a small sound beside me. Not quite a sigh, not quite a whimper. When I look at him, his eyes are fixed on the floor tiles, counting them maybe, or searching for patterns that might make sense of a world that's just revealed itself to be built on lies. "You okay, kid?" I ask quietly. He doesn't answer immediately. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. "I never looked at her." "Not really looked." "What do you mean?" "The colors." Toby's hands twist in his lap. "I told you I could see everyone's colors, but I never told you I stopped looking at Mom's after the accident." "They were too complicated. Too many mixed together in ways that hurt to see." Through the glass, Sarah is explaining her work schedule with the kind of detail that suggests either meticulous record-keeping or careful preparation. Every shift accounted for, every hour documented, every alibi wrapped in the sterile credibility of hospital employment records. But I'm thinking about something else now. Thinking about a conversation from 3 days ago when I asked Toby why he didn't look in mirrors anymore. "Because I don't want to know what color I am now," he'd said. "What if it's black? What if the accident made me like Principal Stone, empty where something important should be?" "Toby," I say carefully, "when did you stop looking at your mother's colors?" "Right after I woke up in the hospital." His voice gets smaller. She was sitting beside my bed crying, and I tried to see what she was feeling. But the colors were all wrong, like someone had taken a paint box and thrown it at a wall. Red and black and orange and gray all swirled together, and underneath it all— He stops, swallows hard. Underneath it all was nothing, the same kind of nothing I saw around Principal Stone. My hands go numb around the coffee cup I've been holding, and there's a heat building in my chest, the uncomfortable warmth of realization setting in like infection. All this time I've been thinking about Sarah Matthews as a grieving widow, a protective mother, a woman pushed to desperation by circumstances beyond her control. But what if the circumstances weren't beyond her control? What if she created them? Morrison is asking about the night Lily Chen disappeared, and Sarah's answer comes with the same practiced precision. Working late, staying over to cover for a colleague, security cameras that would show her leaving the hospital at dawn. Every detail accounted for, every minute of her time documented with the thoroughness of someone who knew these questions would come. Through the glass, Sarah turns slightly, and for the first time since the questioning began, she looks directly at the one-way mirror. She can't see us, but something in her expression suggests she knows we're there, knows Toby is watching. Her face softens into the kind of maternal concern that would convince anyone who hadn't spent the last week learning to see through carefully constructed facades. Toby flinches like he's been struck. The movement is subtle, just a slight recoil, a turning away, but it tells me everything I need to know. This isn't the reaction of a child afraid for his mother or confused by adult complexities. This is the reaction of prey recognizing a predator, even when that predator wears the face of someone who's supposed to love and protect you. I think about my own daughter then, about Emma with her bright smile and her questions about everything, about the way she used to look at me like I could fix any problem and chase away any shadow, about the gray mist Toby saw around me, the weight of guilt I've been carrying for 7 years, ever since I couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most. But Emma never flinched when she looked at me. Even when the cancer was eating her alive and I was helpless to stop it, she never looked at me with fear. She looked at me with love and trust and the kind of faith children have in their parents, right up until the moment that faith gets shattered by someone who should have protected them instead of destroying them. She knows I can see her real colors now, Toby whispers, still not looking toward the glass. She's been pretending for so long, but now she knows I know. And sitting in that observation room, watching Sarah Matthews maintain her carefully constructed mask while her 12-year-old son recoils from her presence, I understand what we're really dealing with. Not a desperate mother driven to extremes by grief and fear, but something much worse. A woman who's been planning and calculating and killing while hiding behind the perfect disguise of maternal love. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like angry wasps, and through the glass, Sarah Matthews smiles at questions about missing children with the practiced warmth of someone who's learned that the right expression can hide the darkest truths. The evidence arrives like a punch to the solar plexus, delivered by a junior detective with the kind of nervous energy that comes from being the bearer of news that changes everything. He slides a manila folder across Morrison's desk with hands that shake just enough to make the papers rustle, and I watch through the glass as Morrison's face goes from professional skepticism to grim certainty in the space of 3 heartbeats. Sarah's hospital schedule, cross-referenced with every disappearance. The dates line up with mathematical precision. Every missing child vanished on a night when Sarah Matthews was working late, when her alibi was airtight, and her whereabouts documented by institutional records that no one would think to question. Lily Chen disappeared on October 15th. Sarah worked a 16-hour shift in pediatrics. Emma Ross vanished on October 22nd. Sarah pulled another double in the ICU, surrounded by witnesses who could swear she never left the building. Except the parking garage cameras tell a different story. Time-stamped images of Sarah's Honda leaving the hospital at midnight and returning before dawn, gaps in her documented presence that she covered with carefully timed breaks and shift changes that left her movements unaccounted for during the exact windows when children were being taken from their beds. I watch Morrison lay out the photographs like a poker player revealing a winning hand, and my hands go cold around my coffee cup. 30 years of police work and I missed it. Missed every carefully orchestrated detail, every calculated alibi, every moment when my instincts should have been screaming that something was wrong. Because I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that Sarah Matthews was just another grieving mother, another victim of circumstances beyond her control. I let her pain blind me to her precision, let her tears hide the calculation in her eyes. I played exactly the role she needed me to play. The sympathetic investigator, the protective father figure, the man so haunted by his own failures that he couldn't see the monster hiding behind maternal love. How many details did I rationalize away? The way she never quite met my eyes when talking about Toby's safety. The precision of her answers. The careful way she guided every conversation toward her own vulnerability and away from any real scrutiny of her story. The fact that she called me in the first place, steering the investigation toward convenient scapegoats while positioning herself as the concerned mother seeking help. Even her paranoia about being watched. What if that wasn't paranoia at all? What if she knew someone was closing in? And she needed a private investigator to muddy the waters, to create enough reasonable doubt that the real evidence would get lost in the chaos of competing theories. Toby shifts beside me, drawing my attention away from the horror show unfolding behind the glass. He's been silent for the past hour, watching his mother's carefully constructed world collapse with the quiet attention of someone who's been waiting for this moment longer than anyone realized. "Mr. Marshall," he says quietly, his voice carrying that particular quality of exhaustion that comes from carrying adult knowledge in a child's heart. "Do all mothers have so many colors at once?" The question hits me like a blade between the ribs. I look at him, really look, and see the careful way he's holding himself together, the tremor in his hands that he's trying to hide, the way his eyes focus on everything except the interrogation room where his mother is finally running out of lies. "No," I tell him, and my voice comes out rougher than I intended. "No, Toby. Most people have 1 or 2 colors at a time, maybe 3 when they're going through something difficult, but not—" I struggle for words that might make sense to a 12-year-old who's just discovered his mother is a monster. "Not the way you described your mom's colors." Toby nods, like this confirms something he's suspected for a long time. "I thought maybe I was broken. After the accident, when the colors started, I thought maybe my eyes were wrong about everything." A surge of guilt hits me so hard I have to grip the arms of my chair to keep from doubling over. This child has been carrying this knowledge for 4 years. 4 years of living with a mother he knew was dangerous. 4 years of seeing colors that told him truths no child should have to know. 4 years of thinking he was the broken one because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. And I was supposed to protect him. That's what I told myself I was doing, protecting a gifted child from people who didn't understand his abilities. Instead, I walked him right back into the house with the person who's been hunting children while hiding behind the perfect disguise of maternal love. "Toby," I say, forcing my voice to stay steady, "why didn't you ever look directly at your mother? You said you stopped after the accident, but why?" He's quiet for so long I think he's not going to answer. When he finally speaks, his words come out in barely audible whispers, like secrets that have been locked away for so long they've forgotten how to be spoken aloud. "Because I saw too many colors at once," he says. "Red anger and black emptiness and gray guilt all swirled together, but underneath everything was this, hunger. Like she was always looking for something to fill up the empty places, and she didn't care what she had to break to get it." Through the glass, Sarah is explaining something to Morrison with the kind of patient tone that suggests she's dealing with a slow child who just needs the right explanation to understand. Her hands move in small, controlled gestures, and her face maintains the expression of a woman who's been wrongfully accused but is trying to be helpful anyway. "I thought if I didn't look directly at her, maybe the colors would go away," Toby continues. "Maybe if I pretended not to see them, she'd stop being what the colors said she was. Maybe she'd go back to being just my mom." The weight of understanding settles over me like lead blankets, pressing down until I can barely breathe. All this time, while I was investigating external threats and chasing shadows, the real danger was sitting at the kitchen table every morning, making coffee and asking about homework and planning the next hunt. "I didn't know which color to trust," Toby whispers, and his voice breaks completely. "There were so many, and they kept changing, and I just wanted her to be the yellow, warm mom color that I remembered from before Dad died. But that color was just pretend, a mask over all the others." I reach over and put my hand on his shoulder, feeling how small he is, how much weight he's been carrying in a frame that should be worried about video games and school projects instead of whether his mother is a killer. His body trembles under my touch, and I realize he's been holding himself together through sheer force of will for longer than any child should have to. Through the glass, Morrison is showing Sarah the parking garage photos, and for the first time since the questioning began, her mask slips. Just for a moment, just long enough for me to see something predatory flicker across her features before the concerned mother expression slides back into place. But it's too late. The evidence is too overwhelming. The timeline too precise, the lies too carefully constructed to be anything but premeditation. Sarah Matthews has been hunting children for months, maybe years, while hiding behind the perfect disguise of grief and maternal love. And her own son saw it coming from the very beginning. The Matthews house looks different when you know what it really is. The peeling white paint isn't charming anymore. It's the kind of decay that suggests something rotten underneath, eating away at the foundation until only the facade remains standing. The yellow kitchen walls that once seemed tired now look jaundiced, sick with secrets that have been festering in the corners for longer than anyone suspected. We return under police escort, Morrison and 2 uniforms flanking us like we're visiting a crime scene instead of what used to be someone's home. Sarah sits at the same kitchen table where I first met her, but her hands aren't trembling anymore. She's past the point of pretending, past the careful performance of maternal concern that fooled me for so long. "I know why you brought me back here," she says without looking up. Her voice has lost that careful modulation, replaced by something flat and cold that makes the air in the kitchen feel thin. "You want the confession, the details, the why." Toby hovers near the doorway, refusing to come fully into the room where he spent 4 years living with a woman who was hunting children while making him breakfast and helping with homework. His eyes dart between his mother and the exits, calculating distances with the instinctive wariness of prey that's learned to recognize predators. "The girls," I say, settling into the chair across from Sarah with my hand resting near my weapon. "Lily Chen and Emma Ross. Tell me about them." Sarah's laugh comes out like broken glass, sharp and cutting. "You want to know about justice, mister? Marshall? About what the universe owes someone when it takes everything away for no reason?" The confession spills out of her like poison, finally finding release. How she couldn't sleep after the accident, couldn't stop thinking about the teenage girl who walked away without a scratch while her husband died on impact. How she started her shifts early so she could drive past the high school, watching groups of girls who looked like the one who destroyed her family. How the rage built inside her like pressure in a cracked pipe until something had to give. "They were careless," she says, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a mathematical equation. "Walking alone after dark, trusting that the world was safe because no one had taught them otherwise. Just like that girl who ran the red light. completely oblivious to the consequences of their actions. But it's what comes next that makes my blood turn to ice water. I used his diary, Sarah says, glancing toward Toby, with something that might have been pride if it weren't so twisted. My son's careful observations about everyone's emotional states. He mapped out their routines, their vulnerabilities, their moments of happiness. All I had to do was find the ones who glowed too bright, who had too much joy for a world that had taken everything from me. Toby makes a sound like he's been punched, a sharp intake of breath that turns into something closer to a sob. His color diary, his careful documentation of human emotion, his attempt to understand the gift that isolated him from everyone around him, perverted into a hunting guide for a mother who saw his insights as tools for her own vengeance. The house around us feels heavy with memory, every surface holding echoes of a family that existed before everything went wrong. Photos on the refrigerator showing birthdays and Christmas mornings when Toby still looked at his mother without fear. His artwork taped to the walls, innocent drawings of stick figures and rainbow skies from before he learned to see the darkness that lives inside people's hearts. You were supposed to protect him, I say, and there's a heat building in my chest that feels dangerously close to the kind of rage that makes people do things they can't take back. He was your son, and you used his gift to hunt children. I was protecting him, Sarah snaps, and for the first time since we sat down, her mask slips completely. The concerned mother disappears, replaced by something cold and calculating and completely without empathy. Do you think I wanted him to see what I really was? Do you think I wanted him to know what his perfect mother was capable of? She stands abruptly, moving toward the kitchen counter with movements that seem casual, but set off every alarm bell in my head. I kept the worst of it away from him. Made sure he never had to see the red on my hands. That's when I see the knife. It's nothing dramatic, just a standard kitchen knife, the kind every household has for cutting vegetables and slicing bread. But the way Sarah's fingers close around the handle tells me everything I need to know about her intentions. This isn't going to end with confessions and handcuffs. This is going to end with blood. Sarah, I say, standing slowly, my hand moving toward my weapon. Put the knife down. You don't understand, she says, turning toward me with eyes that reflect nothing but empty space where conscience should live. He's seen too much, knows too much. The only way to protect him now is to make sure he can't tell anyone else what the colors showed him. The attack comes fast, faster than someone her size should be able to move. She lunges across the kitchen table with the knife aimed at my chest, her face twisted into something that bears no resemblance to the grieving mother who first called me for help. I throw myself sideways, reaching for my gun, but she's already adjusting her angle, coming at me with the practiced movements of someone who's done this before. I see your new color, Mom. Toby's voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. It's crimson, the color of betrayal. The words stop Sarah mid-swing, her knife hand freezing in the air as she turns toward her son with an expression of such pure shock that for a moment she looks almost human again. And that's when I understand the real power of Toby's gift. Not just seeing the colors, but naming them, speaking the truth that everyone else is trying to hide. But I hesitate, looking at Sarah Matthews with the knife in her hand, seeing the broken woman underneath the monster. I feel something that shouldn't be there. Compassion. Because she's still a mother who lost her husband, still a woman who was destroyed by circumstances she couldn't control, even if she chose to let that destruction consume everything around her. That moment of hesitation almost costs me everything. Sarah recovers from Toby's revelation, swinging the knife toward me with renewed fury. But before the blade can find its target, something small and determined crashes into her side. Toby throws himself between us with the kind of desperate courage that belongs to children who've learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back against the people who are supposed to love you. The impact sends Sarah stumbling, her grip on the knife loosening just enough for the weapon to clatter across the linoleum floor. We all stand there for a moment, breathing hard, looking at each other across a kitchen that now holds the wreckage of a family that was broken long before anyone realized it. "I couldn't let you hurt him," Toby says, his voice small but steady. "Even after everything, I couldn't let you hurt someone who was trying to help me." And standing in that kitchen, watching a 12-year-old boy who just saved my life from the mother who was supposed to protect him, I realize that some kinds of courage can only be forged in the darkest places. The handcuffs click into place with the finality of a period at the end of a very long, very dark sentence. Sarah Matthews doesn't struggle as Morrison and the uniforms guide her toward the door, doesn't cry or protest her innocence or make any of the sounds you'd expect from someone whose life has just collapsed into criminal charges and shattered families. She walks with the measured pace of someone who's finally been caught and feels nothing but relief that the performance is over. At the doorway, she pauses and looks back toward Toby with an expression I can't quite read. Not maternal love exactly, but not complete emptiness either. Something closer to curiosity, like she's trying to understand how the child she raised became brave enough to throw himself between her and a knife. "Take care of yourself, Toby," she says, her voice carrying the tone of someone making ordinary small talk instead of saying goodbye before heading to prison for multiple murders. "Remember what I taught you about being careful who you trust." Then she's gone, disappearing into the back of a police car that pulls away from the house with all the ceremony of a garbage truck making its weekly rounds. No sirens, no dramatic departure, just another criminal being transported to face consequences that feel inadequate for the lives destroyed and the trust shattered. Toby and I stand at the kitchen window, watching the car disappear into the October afternoon that looks exactly the same as it did this morning, despite the fact that everything important has changed. The maple tree in the front yard still drops leaves with lazy precision, the neighbor's dog still barks at shadows, and somewhere in Mill Ridge, other children are walking home from school without knowing how close they came to becoming victims of a woman who hid her hunting behind hospital scrubs and maternal concern. I should say something. Should offer comfort or wisdom, or at least acknowledgement of what this boy has endured. But the words stick in my throat like ashes. How do you apologize to a 12-year-old for failing to protect him from his own mother? How do you explain that the adult who was supposed to keep him safe was the very person he needed protection from? "I'm sorry," I finally manage, though the words feel as inadequate as offering a Band-Aid for a severed limb. "I should have seen it sooner. Should have protected you." Toby turns from the window to study me with those storm cloud eyes that have seen too much of human nature's capacity for darkness. But instead of accusation or disappointment, I see something that looks almost like peace. "Your mist is lighter now," he says quietly. "The gray that was always around you, it's not gone, but it's different, less heavy. Like you don't have to carry so much guilt anymore." The observation hits me with unexpected force. I think about Emma, about the 7 years I've spent believing that her death was somehow my fault, that a better father would have found a way to save her from the cancer that ate away at her small body with relentless efficiency. The gray mist Toby saw around me, the weight of guilt and regret and the particular kind of self-hatred that comes from failing to protect the people you love most. But standing in this kitchen where a child just saved my life from his own mother, I feel something shifting inside my chest. Not healing exactly, but something closer to acceptance. I couldn't save Emma from leukemia any more than I could have saved Toby from Sarah's madness if he hadn't been brave enough to save himself. Some tragedies don't have heroes, only survivors and the people who love them enough to keep trying despite impossible odds. "I failed you," I tell him. "I was supposed to figure this out, supposed to keep you safe, and instead I walked you right back into danger." "You didn't fail me," Toby says with the kind of certainty that comes from someone who's spent 4 years watching adults lie to themselves about difficult truths. "You listened to me. You believed me when no one else would. You treated my colors like they mattered instead of trying to make them go away." He moves to his backpack, still sitting by the kitchen table where he left it before our world exploded into confessions and knife attacks and police cars. From inside, he pulls out his color diary, the careful documentation of human emotion that became a hunting guide in his mother's hands, then evidence of her crimes, and now something else entirely. "I want you to have this," he says, holding the notebook out to me with hands that are steadier than mine. "The last page. I wrote something for you." I take the diary with fingers that tremble slightly, feeling the weight of all the observations and insights contained within its worn covers. All those careful notations about human nature, all those attempts by a gifted child to understand the emotional landscape of a world that had suddenly become visible to him in ways that isolated him from everyone around him. The final page contains a single entry, written in Toby's careful script. "Mr. Marshall, October 30th. Sometimes I see the future in people's colors. Yours is gold now, real gold like sunshine after storms. You're going to be okay." The words blur as I read them, and I realize my eyes are watering in a way that has nothing to do with the kitchen's fluorescent lighting. Gold, after 7 years of carrying gray mist and guilt heavy enough to crush hope, a 12-year-old who sees truth in color tells me I'm going to be gold. "Thank you," I tell him, though the words feel too small for what this gift means. "For everything. For being brave enough to see the truth, even when it was dangerous. For being stronger than any child should have to be." A car pulls into the driveway, a Honda Civic with Maryland plates and the kind of well-maintained appearance that speaks of responsible adults who balance checkbooks and remember to change oil on schedule. Toby's aunt and uncle, driving up from Baltimore to collect a nephew they've seen maybe 3 times in his entire life, preparing to integrate a traumatized child with supernatural abilities into a household that probably considers mild anxiety to be a significant emotional challenge. Toby slings his backpack over his shoulder with the practiced motion of someone who's learned that home is something you carry with you rather than something you leave behind. At the door, he pauses and looks back at me one more time. "The gold color," he says quietly. "It's not just about you being okay. It's about you helping other people be okay too. That's what gold means, someone who lights up the dark places for other people." Then he's gone, walking down the front steps toward his new life with relatives who have no idea what they're taking on, leaving me standing in a kitchen that smells like old coffee and recent violence, holding a diary full of truths that most people wouldn't believe if you swore to them on a stack of Bibles. Outside, the October afternoon continues its lazy drift toward evening, and somewhere in Mill Ridge, other families are sitting down to dinner without knowing how close they came to losing everything to a woman who hid monsters behind maternal love. But for the first time in 7 years, I'm not drowning in gray mist. For the first time since Emma died, I'm thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to start with. The rain starts as I sit in my Crown Vic outside the Matthews house, fat drops that splatter against the windshield like tears from a sky that's finally ready to wash away the stains of the last 2 weeks. October rain in Mill Ridge has its own particular character, not the violent storms that announce themselves with thunder and lightning, but the steady, patient precipitation that settles into your bones and makes you think about things you'd rather forget. I light a cigarette, though I've been trying to quit for the past 3 years, and let the smoke fill my lungs with the kind of warmth that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with old habits that provide comfort when comfort is in short supply. Through the rain-streaked windshield, the house looks smaller than it did when I first arrived here, as if the revelation of its secrets has somehow diminished its presence in the world. Toby's diary sits on the passenger seat beside me, its worn cover dark with moisture from the brief run between the house and the car. I open it to the last page again, reading his careful words by the dome light that turns the car's interior into a small bubble of yellow warmth in the gathering darkness. Sometimes I see the future in people's colors. Yours is gold now. Real gold, like sunshine after storms. You're going to be okay. Gold. For 7 years, I've been a man wrapped in gray mist, carrying the weight of failures real and imagined, defined by the things I couldn't fix and the people I couldn't save. But according to a 12-year-old who sees emotions as colors and speaks truth with the clarity of someone who's never learned to lie to himself, I'm going to be something different now, something brighter. I think about the case that brought me here. A mother's desperate call about her gifted son, a story of supernatural perception and small-town secrets that seemed too strange to be real. How many clues did I miss because I was looking for external threats instead of recognizing that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who sleep in your house and help you with homework? How many times did Sarah Matthews smile at me while planning her next hunt, secure in the knowledge that I was too blinded by my own assumptions to see what was hiding in plain sight? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the right question is how a 12-year-old boy survived 4 years of living with a killer and still found the courage to save a stranger's life when it mattered most. How someone that young learned to see the darkness in people's hearts without letting it consume his own capacity for hope and trust and basic human decency. The rain intensifies, drumming against the roof with the persistence of time itself, and I think about Emma. Not the gray mist version of memory that's haunted me for 7 years, but the real Emma, the little girl who asked endless questions about everything, who insisted on wearing mismatched socks because she liked the way they looked different, who faced cancer treatments with more grace than most adults manage facing traffic jams. Emma, who never once looked at me with fear, even when I was helpless to fix the thing that was killing her. Emma, who trusted me completely right up until the moment her small hand went slack in mine, and the machines started making sounds that meant everything was over. For the first time since her funeral, I let myself remember her without the crushing weight of guilt. She didn't die because I failed her. She died because sometimes children get sick, and medicine isn't enough, and the universe doesn't care about fairness or justice, or how desperately fathers love their daughters. I couldn't save her any more than I could have saved Toby if he hadn't been brave enough to save himself. But I'm still here, still breathing, still capable of helping other people navigate the darkness that seems to multiply like cancer cells in the corners of small towns where secrets go to grow and fester. Still able to listen when gifted children try to tell adults about the colors they see. Still willing to believe that sometimes the impossible things are just truths wearing unfamiliar clothes. Some mysteries will always remain unsolved. Why some children are born with the ability to see emotions as colors. Why tragedies strike the innocent while the guilty walk away unscathed. Why love and trust and basic human decency persist in a world that seems designed to crush them. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to solve every mystery, but to keep showing up despite the uncertainty, to keep trying to protect the vulnerable even when you can't protect everyone. The cigarette burns down to my fingers, and I flick it out the window into the rain that will wash away the ash like it washes away everything else eventually. Time to go home. Time to sit in my own kitchen and drink coffee that doesn't taste like institutional despair. Time to think about what comes next for a man whose future is apparently gold. I start the engine and the Crown Vic responds with the reliable rumble of American engineering from a decade when cars were built to last through whatever the roads threw at them. The headlights cut through the rain and darkness, illuminating the street ahead in twin cones of yellow light that make the familiar look foreign, and the ordinary seem full of possibility. As I pull away from the Matthews house for the last time, driving through streets that hold their secrets a little less tightly now that one monster has been caged, I feel something in my chest that I haven't experienced in 7 years. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but something close to it. Something that might grow into contentment, given enough time and patience, and the kind of hope that comes from understanding that even in the darkest places, children can still see colors that adults have forgotten how to name. Gold, Toby said. Real gold, like sunshine after storms. For tonight, in a car filled with cigarette smoke and rain-scented air, driving through a town that's just remembered how to breathe again, that's enough.